Today, Professor Das will be speaking on a very beautiful title. Um, um, it's on freedom and surrender. But before we listen to Professor Das, let us look into what he said during the course of his last lecture on faith. Well, during his last lecture, he talked of faith, and however, he did not make a distinction between belief and faith. Well, he took the degrees, but he had in his mind of a belief of a highest degree, which he interpreted as faith. So there lies a distinction between belief and faith. And after the end of that webinar last Saturday, I interpreted the distinction some way like this. Belief in something is a mindset where we take that something will work, and we normally don't attach any doubt to it. But when we talk of faith, it is a mindset where we take that whatever, it will never fail us. So belief is a pattern in the mindset where we think the system will work. But faith is of a very high standard, wherein the mindset of a person is such that he totally surrenders on something, having in the back of his mind that something will never fail him. That is the greatest thing that we have in faith. Well, during the course of his last lecture, Professor Das said that faith is basic to everything. Even science also starts with some sort of belief, not exactly faith, some sort of belief. But he took the pattern of a transition from right faith to right knowledge to right action. But add to what Professor Das has said, that even in the right knowledge or right action, faith should never die. That faith leads to a sort of surrender. Maybe that sort of surrender Professor Das will be talking of today. You see, surrendering to something without freedom is bondage. But having a sort of surrender, totally free to himself, having a total faith on yourself and also on the object on whom you are surrendering, that is liberation. So there, the controversy of freedom and surrender, they vanish, because there is a total faith and there is not even an iota of doubt left. So there is a merger. So there remains no contradiction in freedom and surrender. It is this faith is the binding link which merges the total freedom with the total surrender. And this is liberation. Maybe Professor Das will be speaking on today's topic in this slide. I don't know what he has got in his mind. Maybe faith is the binding link, which I see might be the connecting thread between freedom and surrender. But for the talk, let us move to Professor Das. What he has got in his mind to express today. We had beautiful lectures from him. hoping for another good lecture from Professor Das. Let us move to Professor Das for his lecture. Over to Professor Das for the lecture. Welcome, sir.
Namaskar. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, sir, both audible and visible.
Thank you. Respected Dr. Rao and very esteemed participants of this session. Today we shall discuss a very beautiful topic, that is freedom and surrender. These two concepts appear to be contradictory or opposite to each other. Because if you think of freedom, we generally feel reluctant to accept surrender. Because if you are free, we cannot surrender. And if we surrender, then we are not free. If I am free, then I can surrender to anybody. Because I am free. I am free to do anything. I am free to live my life in my own style. And that is existentialism. Existentialism says that use your freedom in the best way. And you are thrown into this world with freedom. Freedom is the only asset with man, that he is the total owner of freedom. Freedom is his own only asset. So we exist with our freedom and we are free to use our freedom. And our freedom compels us to be responsible. If I am free and if I do something freely, then at the same time, I shall hold the responsibility of my action. If I am not free, if I have done something out of any constraint, out of any compulsion, out of any pressure, then I am not free and I have no responsibility. If something is done in my undone position, when I have no control over it, I am not free at all. In that case, I am not responsible for that. So the more I free, the more I am free, the more I free myself from the limitations, the more I remain responsible for my freedom. So freedom and responsibility, they go hand in hand. We enjoy freedom and we suffer from our responsibility. Now the question is, if we surrender, should we lose our freedom or not? This is the question. And what is the qualification of a person who can surrender? And what is the ultimate goal of freedom? Freedom can be used in two meanings, two senses. Freedom as the process and freedom as the goal. Our ultimate goal is freedom. That is Mukhya, Paramapurusartha, liberation. That is the ultimate goal of life. Paramapurusartha, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Mukhya. Freedom is the goal. Ultimately, we want freedom. That is the goal of life. But freedom is also the process. That means free thinking. Free thinking. In order to attain freedom, we have to be free. So freedom is the process and freedom is the goal. Which is first? The goal is not first. The means is first. The process is first. Because the ultimate freedom, the goal that can be attained by the process of freedom. Process of freedom means it is an epistemological attempt, it is a psychological attempt to attain that state of freedom. So we have to exercise our freedom in order to attain freedom. So if we know that we are responsible for our freedom, then we should be very much careful about our freedom. If there is responsibility, there is care. There is seriousness. We should be serious. We should be conscious about our bondage and freedom. Freedom means freedom from bondage. Anything that binds us, anything that limits us, anything that confines us into a limited circle, we have to be free from that. So this is the process of freedom, and the ultimate goal is also freedom. Therefore, the process is also yoga, and the goal is also yoga. Yoga has also two meanings, process and the goal. The moment we focus on the process, that is yoga, and the moment we focus on the goal, that is also yoga. So education means freedom from ignorance. The sole purpose of education is to have free thinking. That free thinking is called rationality. Rationality does not mean that only to think. No. Think with full consciousness, full awareness. To think freely. That should be free thinking. If our thought is biased by, is prejudiced by, is conditioned by, is motivated by any ism or any theory or any philosophy, any fond beliefs, any religion, that means we are not free. So thinking is not sufficient. Only thinking cannot make us rational. Rationality means we should have a free thinking. We should not follow any ism or any theory or any philosophy or any view blindly, dogmatically. We should have a critical appraisal. We should have a critical attitude. We should have to go beyond. That possibility of going beyond is a human possibility. If there is a scope for going beyond, that is evident that we enjoy freedom. If we have a chance, we have an opportunity to go beyond, to excel, to grow, to glow, then we can say that we are free. If we are not growing, if we are not transforming, if we are not prospering, if our mind is not getting mature, if our intellect is not getting mature, if we are not becoming spiritual day by day, that means we are not free. So the transformation is the goal of life. Transformation means it is a change. It is an evolution from the lower perfection to the higher perfection. We don't claim that we are perfect, but we are marching towards perfection. We are transforming ourselves at every moment. Every moment is a moment of transformation. Every moment we are getting changed, scientifically viewed. Every cell of our body is getting changed. We are different persons in every 4 months, in every 6 months, entirely different personality. Similarly, our psychological state, psychological mood, that is also different from time to time. According to our psychological thoughts, we are also different personalities. We are different persons in different moments. So, that is the sign of development. That is the sign of education. That means we are educated. We can claim that we are educated only through our transformation. What I was before 1 year or before 10 years, and what I am today, and what I shall be after 1 year. So that means if we do not try to transform, if we do not try to develop, still there is transformation and evolution without our efforts, without our attempts. But if we shall do, if we shall try, if we shall have spiritual sadhana, then we can attain it very soon, very quickly we can attain it. So the attainment of freedom is the ultimate goal, and the process is also freedom. That means we should exercise our free will, our free thought to be free from the dogmatic beliefs, the ignorance, preoccupied thoughts, fond beliefs, different types of attachments, our vasanas, our karma phala, or the consequences of our actions. We can be free from all these things. Sa vidya ja vimukta. Sa vidya ja vimukta means we should pursue that knowledge, that wisdom, which can give us freedom, which can give us liberation. Sa vidya ja vimukta. That is paravidya. We are all engaged with paravidya. We are all engaged with natural sciences. We are all engaged with empirical sciences. And we satire, we make jokes about the metaphysics because they are not perceivable, because they are not experimented in the scientific laboratory. That means we are confined to our scientific laboratory. We are confined to our scientific approach to reality. We are confined to our scientific worldview. Therefore, we are not free. We cannot come out of that laboratory bondage. We become a man of laboratory, man of science, not a man of wisdom or freedom. So knowledge means the knowledge of the ignorance. How ignorant you are, if you know, that means you are a man of wisdom. What knowledge you have, that is not the science of education. The education is that how ignorant you are. What you do not know, that is the real status of your knowledge. You know that you should know that what you don't know. To map our ignorance is the real sign of education. That is real wisdom, that I know my limitation. So metaphysical consciousness, metaphysical questions arise only when we come to realize that this empirical world is not sufficient. There is something beyond it. When we feel suffocated, when we feel dissatisfied with this empirical world, because our existence, our consciousness, our bliss, all these are infinite. Our source is infinite, so we cannot be satisfied with the finite knowledge, finite world, finite existence. Anything finite, we cannot be satisfied because we are infinite. If I am the infinite, I cannot be satisfied with the finite. Therefore, there is an urge for the infinite. There is urge for the ultimate satisfaction. There is an urge for ultimate peace. There is an urge for ultimate freedom. Therefore, money cannot satisfy us, property cannot satisfy us, wealth cannot satisfy us, powers, nothing empirical can satisfy us. Still, we have an inner urge to go beyond, to go beyond, to go beyond, to go beyond. And this urge will be saturated at a point when we attain real freedom. Many philosophers claim that this state of freedom can be attainable after death. After death is attainable. You cannot attain freedom in this very life. Many philosophers claim so. And many philosophers also claim that you can be free in this life, in this moment, and at every place. In this moment means in this moment. Tatkhanat, immediately one can attain freedom because his mind will be changed. So this mind that binds and that liberates. Mind is the cause of bondage and liberation. We are bound by our thoughts, we are bound by our passions, we are bound by our desires. So immediately we can change our minds, we can change our mindset, and a bound personality can become a free personality. Any moment it is possible, and 100 lives are also not sufficient to change our prakriti, to change our attitudes, our bondage. So freedom is attainable at every moment, and freedom may not be attained in hundreds of lives. That depends upon our practice. That depends upon our understanding. That depends upon our realization of the truth. In ethics also, freedom is considered as the postulate of morality. In ethics, when we discuss about morality, when we discuss about good action, bad action, when we discuss about papa and punya, when we discuss about vice and virtue, when we discuss about values, here the first postulate is freedom. Freedom is the basic postulate of morality. There are 3 postulates, and out of that, freedom is very important postulate of morality. If you are not free to do an action, if you are not free to choose your action, then your action cannot be judged to be moral or immoral. Only a voluntary action can be judged as moral or immoral. That voluntary action is the action done by freedom or free will. Involuntary actions are not judged as moral or immoral. Therefore, the actions of children, action of very old people, action of patients, these actions are not treated as voluntary actions. These are involuntary actions. They are done they are not done deliberately. So they cannot be considered as good or bad. So only voluntary actions are just as good or bad. Therefore, freedom is the postulate of morality. If you are not free, your action cannot be considered as good or bad. So when Arjuna felt reluctant to fight, so he was also asked the same question, whether you are free to fight or free not free, whether you are free to fight or not to fight. You decide. If you are free to fight, you will hold that responsibility. If you are free to not, you are free not to fight, then also you will hold your responsibility. In either case, you will hold your responsibility. So every moment's existence is rooted in our freedom or free will. Every moment is a new moment because every moment we exercise our freedom and we decide our next moment. Next moment is decided by this instant moment when I am exercising my freedom. So I should be ready for the consequences. If a person is motivated by the consequences, that man is not free. So freedom, we should apply freedom in jnana, karma, and bhakti. First of all, we shall discuss karma. Suppose I am doing something, I am performing an action. If I am motivated by the consequences, and such consequences will come after this action as the result of the action. We are going to face certain consequences. That is imaginary because we imagine so, because we do not know the exact consequences. Whenever we think of the consequences, they are possible consequences. Consequences do not come mathematically. Consequences are always due to our assumptions. We assume that such consequences may take place. We are not sure about it. We just imagine that such and such action will breed such and such consequences. And we live by our imagination. We live by our belief. We live by our dreams, which is a fake world. We live in a fake world. We live in an imaginary world. Then what happens? If the consequence does not occur according to our choice, according to our will, then we feel frustrated. Therefore, there we get frustration, depression, despair. All these things are not due to the consequences. They are due to the unexpected consequences. Consequence is not bad. And every consequence is also a fact. That is a fact of life. But we give color to it. We give color to it, and that color is success or failure. And we get our own result, the result of our own passions, expectations, dreams, imaginations. We had imagined so and so consequences. We did not get it. Therefore, we felt frustrated. So frustration is nothing but the product of our mental construction. Consequence is not bad. If you do something, any consequence may take place. The expected consequence may take place. The unexpected consequence may take place. So the actor or the agent who is acting, who is doing an action, he should be free. He should be free from the imagination of possible consequences. Otherwise, he cannot be a Niskama Karmi. Otherwise, he cannot do the perfect work. If there is a slightest desire for the consequence, that I have very small desire for the consequence, then that will also obstruct our way. That will be also that will be the cause of our bondage. And that slightest desire for the consequence will become a big tree by multiplication. It multiplies very speedily. So there should not be a very small bit of desire for consequence, because that loses our freedom. So the very consequence is not seen. If we really believe in science, we are all hypocrites. Hypocrites means we give the slogan of a scientific approach. Science believes in direct perception. Science does not believe in the imaginary world, does not believe in the imaginary world. So very scientifically we can say, because the consequence is not perceived, therefore we should focus on what is perceived. Only the karma is perceived, only the action is perceived. So scientifically, we should do our action without being worried about the consequences which are not perceived, which are not experimented in the laboratory. In the laboratory, only the present moment, the present action is there to be experimented upon. So if we really believe in scientific approach, then we should be a Niskama Karmi. Because the very desire for the consequence is useless, because it is imaginary. It is our own fond belief. It is our expectation. And these are all bind me. That is the cause of bondage. So Niskama Karma, or the law of karma, is not only a theory, it should be practiced in our daily life at every moment. Every moment we should practice the art of being free. Art of being free. So every action should be done only in the sense of duty. Only in the sense of duty. I am not worried by any consequence, because action is done means consequence must follow. Consequences will come after something is done. So we should not be worried about it, because that will be the cause of our bondage. So Niskama Karmi is the mind of a Niskama Karmi is very scientific. His thought is very scientific. His approach to action is very scientific, because he is engaged in something which is perceived, which is directly experimented. So a Niskama Karmi is a man of science. It's not a man of metaphysics. But how can one do Niskama Karma without having any desire for the consequence? You should have orientation about the consequences. You should have orientation. You should have a planning. You should have an orientation about the consequence. But while you are engaged in doing the action, don't be engaged in the thought of the consequences. Because that is the source of bondage. That is the wall between action and perfection. Between action and perfection, there is a wall of expectation. So there should not be any action and perfection. So every action is our perfect action. Every action is our yajna. Every action is our wisdom. Only if it is done in the sense of duty, in the sense of lokasangraha. So from the cosmic standpoint, from the cosmic vision, from the wider perspective, we should act. We should act. That means we should be free from the relative perspectives. We should act from the higher perspective, and that is possible only when we are free from the lower perspectives. That is called real freedom. And that freedom is practiced in our daily life, in our family, in our society, in our workplace. Everywhere we exercise this freedom. Because every moment we have existence. Every moment there is transformation. Every moment there is a chance of error. Every moment there is a chance of bondage. Every moment there is a chance of enlightenment, transformation. So we are free to use or misuse our time. We are free to use or misuse our opportunities. We have opportunities, we are free to use or misuse it. That is the point. So we are free to act, we are free to do something, but we are also free not to expect the consequences. We are also free to be sakam karmi or niskam karmi. So that is the state of action, free action. And the free action, the action that is done for the lokasangraha from a higher perspective, that can never bind us. Many people think that if they do sattvic karma, then they can declare it, they can feel proud of it, they can take credit of it, that I am engaged in sattvic karma, which is better than rajasic and tamasic. But in the 18th chapter, very beautifully it is narrated that, it is described that, it is explained that even one should be free from its sattvic nature, because it is also the product of prakriti. One should be free from guna. It may be tamasic, it may be rajasic, and it may be sattvic. So we cannot be bound by any good guna, any good quality. Iron chain and golden chain. Chain, that is a bondage. So one should be free from any type of chain. So freedom, physical freedom, psychological freedom, and also freedom from spirituality. How can we understand spiritual freedom? We shall discuss. But now we are discussing about physical freedom, that is action, that is sense organs, that is our passion. We should be free from our passions. We can control our passion. Therefore, in this physical world, we can be engaged with our duties, engaged with our actions in the sense of a duty. This is the physical discipline. Here we perform an action. Here we perform an action with a free mind. That means I did and I forgot. I don't have any account of my action. I don't have an expectation from my action, because action is done means consequence will follow. And the consequence will follow according to the action, whether we desire or don't desire. Therefore, we should live in a very, very practical world, very possible world, not in an imaginary world of expectations. Similarly, this is freedom in karma. That one should be a free actor, one should be a free agent, one should be free from his action, one should be free from the knowledge of action, and one should be free from the sense of agency that I am doing this. This is the sense of agency. The agent will do, and that agent will have will be free from the sense of agency. How can an agent do an action without the sense of agency? That is freedom. Agent is there, but the sense of agency is not there. Action is there, but the sense but the expectation of the consequence is not there. Knowledge of action is there, but one is not bound by, biased by, motivated by a particular knowledge of action. Knowledge can be modified, knowledge can be changed. The purpose of knowledge not only to pursue one definite action. Knowledge should guide us to change our action whenever it is necessary. In that sense, man should be free from training. Man should be free from previous knowledge, previous experience. Suppose I have experience, but that may be wrong. That may not be applied in all situations equally. So I should be free from my preoccupied knowledge, preoccupied experience. I should be free to be free. I should be free to change myself. That is freedom. Whatever I am, I shall be. No, that is not freedom. That is bondage. Whatever I am free to change myself, because there is a evolution. There is a transformation. I am bound to be changed. Change is a must. Therefore, I should be free to be changed. If I am not free, if I am bound, then I cannot change myself. So that flexibility should be there. That freedom should be there. So freedom from passion. Passion means passionate desires, or called vasana. Propensities, sensuous impulsions, preoccupied thoughts, habits, we should be free. And how it is possible? It is possible if we do something from a higher perspective, not from my personal perspective and not from a limited perspective, from a higher perspective. And that higher perspective is Lokasangraha. That higher perspective is the sense of duty. That higher perspective is the absence of the sense of agency. That higher perspective is the freedom from the sense, freedom from the expectation of the consequences. These are the four principles of Niskama Karma. That the action should be done for Lokasangraha. Action should be done without the sense of agency. Action should be done without the expectation of the consequences. All these things justify a Niskama Karma. So we should be free from our action, our agency, and the knowledge of action. And that is real freedom. The point is, in the Bhagavad Gita it is said, not a single moment, not a single moment, one is free not to do something. Every moment he is bound to do something. Not for a single moment, he is free not to do anything. No. Every moment is a moment of action. Every moment he has to do something. So this is determinism. This is determinism. Suppose I decided not to act, that is also an action. The very decision not to act, that is also a work. That is also an action. That means every moment I am determined to do an action because I am engaged. Either this work or that work. Even I am not doing anything, that not doing anything is also doing something. That is also doing, that is also action. In that sense, that is determinism. And how can this determinism will be converted to freedom? If we accept that determinism. If there is a determining factor, just accept this positively. Then you are free from that. Accept that determinism, that yes, every moment is a moment of action and I am ready for it. I am devoted for it. I am dedicated for it. And that is my dharma. That is my dharma. My dharma is to be engaged in the good works. And good work means the good work for the society, for Lokasangraha. So, the point is, every moment is a moment of action. Then I have to do something. That is a must. But I have to be free from my action. That means I shall do action, and at the same time, I have to learn how to be free from my action. I shall do my dharma, and at the same time, I have to learn to be free from my dharma. That means I am not the agent. I don't have that ego, that sense of agency that I am the owner of my dharma. Dharma means duty. If I am doing something in the sense of duty, that cannot disturb my memory, that cannot disturb my existence, that cannot develop the sense of ego in me. One should be trained in this way. So freedom is the postulate of morality in that sense. If you do not exercise your maximum freedom, then your action is not ethical. You don't have that sense of ethics. Another dimension is we should be free from knowledge. That is Jnana Yoga. In Karma Yoga, we are bound to do action, but we have to learn to be free from our action. Action is done, and I am free from it. I did my duty, but I am not bound by my duty. I did my duty, but my duty cannot bind me. My duty cannot be the cause of my bondage, because duty can't be the cause of a bondage. Action may be. If the action is done in the sense of duty, in the sense of Lokasangraha, without the sense of agency, that action cannot bind me. Freedom is that. If by doing something, I become captive, I become a slave to my action, that action really does not help me. That does not help me. That action does not help me. I am really helped if I do something and at the same time I am free from my doing, free from my action. that man is a free man. So all Niskama Karmi enjoy freedom. This is the dimension of our action, where we enjoy freedom. We can't exist for a single moment without doing something. This is a fact. This is the reality. Every moment we are bound to do something. But every moment's engagement, every moment's action cannot bind me if I do my actions in the sense of duty. One thing here I left when I am speaking about Niskama Karma, that I told 4, but I am speaking about 3. I am leaving 1 point. What are the 3 points? Niskama Karma is that which is done in the sense of a duty. Niskama Karma is that which is done for Lokasangraha, for the welfare of the majority, welfare of all. Niskama Karma is that which is done without the sense of agency. These 3. Deliberately, I am leaving the 4th point. That is the conclusion. We shall discuss that. But now I am telling because I shall go to Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. Because I shall end here the Karma Yoga. So the 4th point is that you should surrender yourself. You should surrender yourself. You should surrender yourself to the Almighty. That this is not my action. I don't have any agency. I am simply an instrument. If I am doing my dharma, if dharma is done by me, then I cannot be the agent. I cannot be an agent because I just represent. I am a representative of the person who is engaged to protect dharma. Dharma is to be protected. Many principals have gone. The college is going on. Many prime ministers have gone. But the country is going on. Everything is going on because dharma is there. Dharma is there. Only the dharma is done. So who is doing it? Who is protecting dharma? It's not important at all. So here Arjuna, you don't think that you are fighting. You are simply doing your sadharma. And the purpose of dharma, what is your dharma? Your dharma is to protect dharma. Your dharma is to protect dharma. And if dharma is protected, you are protected. Dharma rakhyati rakhitaha. Dharma rakhyati rakhitaha. So it is imperative that you should protect dharma. Because protection of dharma ensures your own existence. Otherwise you can't exist. So the person who is engaged in protecting dharma should not claim that he is the owner of dharma. He has no agency. Therefore, he is merely an instrument. If dharma is performed, if dharma is protected, that is enough. Who protected it? It is not necessary. It is not necessary at all. Therefore, there is no sense of agency. Here comes surrender, that because I did something in the sense of duty, so the first criterion is fulfilled. The second is I did it for Lokasangraha, so the second qualification I achieved. Third is I suspended the sense of agency. This way also I am qualified. Then naturally I should surrender. Because I have nothing to acquire. because I have nothing to claim, because I have nothing to own. Everything is done for Lokasangraha. Everything is done for duty. Everything is done without the sense of agency. Therefore, I surrender. It is your work. Your work means it is secular. Your work means the higher order. I surrender before the higher order. I surrender before the higher perspective. From that perspective, I have done this. Therefore, I am not the instrument. I am the instrument. I am not the agent. I am simply an instrument. My duty is to protect Dharma. And Dharma is protected and the program is over. This is in karma. In jnana, that is pursued by our mind, intellect. Mind is the source of all types of emotion. In Indian culture, there is a difference between mind and intellect. Here we understand mind, we treat mind as the source of emotion, bhavana. But intellect is the source of all decisions, all judgments, all discriminations, viveka jnana. This is distinct from that. This is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong. All these judgments are due to the exercise of our intellect. When we are discussing in intellectual forum, here we do not focus on our mind. We focus on our intellect, our intellectual understanding. And intellectual understanding is higher than mental understanding, psychological understanding. Psychological understanding may be biased, may be motivated by our fond beliefs, by our religion, by our philosophy, by our social ideology. But intellect is beyond that. Intellect is there to guard our emotions. Intellect is there to make a sharp distinction between good and evil, good and bad, right and wrong, dharma and adharma. So, mind should be free. Mind should be free from the very mind itself. This mind is thinking. There are different thoughts. And thoughts vary from person to person. And in one person, from time to time, from place to place, thoughts vary. And we always find ourselves in the crossroads where there are polarities, relative chances to do, not to do, to be, not to be, to fight, not to fight, to do, not to do, all these things. But at that moment, one should know how to go beyond these contradictory thoughts, these relative thoughts. If this is thesis, this is antithesis, one should learn to make a synthesis, to go beyond thesis and antithesis, to beyond the different types of thoughts. So thoughts are created by mind, but mind should transcend thoughts. This is spiritual sadhana. Mind is the source of all thoughts. From that chamber, all thoughts will come, or all thoughts will be originated from that source of mind. But mind has also another capacity to transcend all thoughts, to go beyond all thoughts. That means mind should not be trapped by the modifications of a mind or chitta vrittis. There are different vrittis, chitta vrittis, modifications of mind. So mind should be free from the formats of mind, formats of understanding, from the formal understanding. from the limitations, from the contradictory thoughts which are created by mind itself. Therefore, in the philosophy of Aurobindo, there we have discussed different types of minds, upper mind, higher mind, illumined mind, super mind, Sachidananda. There are different types of mind. Different types of mind means different levels of consciousness. So the more we transform, the more we become mature in our understanding, the more we can enjoy the psychological freedom. The more we can enjoy our psychological freedom. So while doing our action, there we discuss about the physical freedom. Also psychological applications are there, but when we discuss about knowledge, it is purely psychological. It is purely intellectual. Here we do not need the empirical world. All problems can be settled in the mind in a very closed chamber. We can sit at one place, we shall think deeply about the problems, and we can solve these problems by our proper understanding, by our proper judgment, without relating to the empirical world. That means mind can exercise the psychological power without relating to the empirical world. That means mind can be controlled without the empirical world. Mind can be controlled without sense organs. But sense organs cannot be controlled without mind. Therefore, mind is the higher reality than sense organs. Sense organs can be controlled by mind. Mind cannot be controlled by sense organs. If we think so, if we say so, this is a wrong conception. If mind is controlled, everything is controlled. So, mind is a higher level of consciousness than our sensuous consciousness, our physical consciousness. And there are different possibilities of consciousness, levels of consciousness. Therefore, at every moment, by our proper understanding, deep understanding, realization, we can transform from a lower understanding to the higher understanding, from the lower level of consciousness to the higher level of consciousness. This is called psychological freedom, or freedom from mind. So mind should be free from mind, because that is a very problematic bondage, that all types of moho means infatuation, attachment, all types of attachment, all types of vasana, all types of reactions, they are organized through our mind only, because our sense organs are very innocent. They just have sensuous attachment. They can't keep it in memory. Mind keeps everything, every experience in memory. That reminds us about our previous pleasure, previous experience, previous failure, previous success, and tries to trap us by further engagement. So we have to control our mind. Sense organs are innocent. They are natural to be engaged with the empirical world. But mind has a capacity to be engaged in the empirical world and to transcend all types of engagements. So our mind should have a better engagement. That is spiritual sadhana. That is the purpose of life. That is freedom. So every moment there is an attainment of freedom. The quality, the intensity of freedom differs from the perfection of one moment to another moment. Yes, today I am enjoying freedom, but this is of a particular intensity. This is of a particular quality. This is of a particular degree of freedom. The more I become spiritually trained, the more I become the more I shall have spiritual sadhana. I shall be trained in doing my duties and trained in controlling my thought process, to become the witness of my thought process, then I can enjoy freedom. Freedom from my own mind. And spiritual freedom means that is also a very pathetic bondage, I shall say, because the person who is engaged in spiritual sadhana, by the way, he becomes a slave of that sadhana. Suppose you have reached a height, suppose you have become really you have become a man of wisdom, then you have to descend yourself to the empirical world. If you go to the height, but you fail to descend, fail to come down, that is also a type of a bondage. Either you are in bondage in the lower world, empirical world, or in the bondage in the higher world. Everything is a bondage. Free man is he who can change his place. So for a free man, both Vyavaharika Satta and Paramarthika Satta equally meaningful. For a free man, Jagat Mithya and Jagat Satya are equally meaningful. If you are really convinced that Jagat is Mithya and only Brahman is truth, then you are a fool. You are a fool means you cannot live in this empirical world with that knowledge of a Brahman. You should have knowledge of the Vyavaharika Satta. You should have the knowledge of this empirical world. Otherwise, you can't live. That means you are not free. A free man is he who is very much comfortable with all possibilities. Yes, in this possible way, I can admit, I have to admit that Jagat is Satya. It is truth now that I am speaking through this instrument and my voice is reaching all of you. I can't ignore this. This is due to science. This is due to my network. This is due to it is because of the fact that my mobile is well charged. So many conditions are there through which I am able to reach you. We can't ignore this. If I ignore this with the sense that everything is Brahman, you are Brahman and I am Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi, and the entire Jagat is Mithya, then I am a fool. Fool means I am not free. So this is spiritual bondage. Spiritual bondage means, suppose you have reached a state, suppose you have, I have seen so many people. I always like to test the man of spirituality. Those who claim that they are spiritual or they have attained the height of spirituality, their level of consciousness is very high. So in that case, I always test them. I test them means I perceive their sense of agency. I perceive their sense of anger. I perceive their sense of feeling discomfort. All these things I minutely observe and I see that they have also such limitations. Because they are not flexible. Freedom means flexibility. If you are not flexible in the material existence, in the psychological existence, and also in spiritual existence, you are not free. You have to be flexible. Similarly, I am giving another example. Sattva, Raja, and Tama. These are three gunas. But we can't say that only Sattva guna is better than other two. No. Every guna has its momentous contribution for our existence. Every guna. Sometimes tamasic guna is necessary because we want rest, we want sleep, Our sense organs will get tired if they will not, if they will become restless. They will have no rest at all. Therefore, we have Sunday. Therefore, we enjoy holidays. Sunday is there because because all 6 days are the day of activities. So we should feel relaxed in Sunday. So there should be a break. Suppose we are driving a car, there should be a break to stop it. Now I am speaking, there should be a break after 1 hour. After 1 hour, I should break. If there is no break, I am simply speaking and speaking and speaking, then it is Rajasic. It is not, it's Rajasic. So there should be a break. So there should be sound sleep in the night. If you take medicine to sleep, or if we fail to sleep, that means we are not sattvic. Sattvic means you should have sound sleep. If you sleep peacefully, if you spend your night peacefully by having sound sleep, then your attitude is sattvic. That is your sattvic attitude. That is your sattvic attitude. So rest is necessary. So sometimes tamasic guna is also very much important. Sometimes rajasic guna is also important. I have told many times. Sometimes we should be active. We should run. We should stand fast. We should be dynamic. So that rajasic gun, rajasic quality is also very much required. We should behave like a Kshatriya. The same person is Brahmin, Kshatriya, Sudra, and Vaishya. Different personalities, different stature of his personality are reflected in different times, in different existential necessities. These gunas are reflected. So sometimes tamasic guna is necessary, sometimes rajasic guna is necessary, and sometimes sattvic guna is also necessary. Therefore, in Sankhya system, it is said that when one guna dominates over other two gunas, action takes place, modifications takes place, creation takes place. So from our action, we can determine which guna is dominated in our personality. Suppose I did something, from that action one can judge out of these three gunas which guna has been dominant over other two gunas. Therefore, I have told many times, suppose the newly married couple, if they live like a sattvic life, they will do bhajana kirtan, they will worship deities day and night, they will have no child. For child, you should have a rajasic quality. You should be romantic. That is also necessary for existence. Otherwise, you cannot become parents. So sometimes romanticism is there, is required. Sometimes intellectual deliberation is required. Sometimes sleep is also required. Sleep is very much rest, sleep, pause, break. All these things are necessary for our existence. And sometimes sattvic attitude is also necessary, because that is the attitude, that is the state of stability. That is the stableness. That I am stable. I am sthira. I am sthira. Though I am rajasic, though I am tamasic, still I am stable. Stable means I can control. I can use my sense organs, and at the same time I know how to control my sense organs. I can use my mind, and at the same time I know how to control my mind. That is sattvic. But the point is that please understand the benefit, the contribution of all these three gunas. It is not that, suppose you think that sattvic guna is better than other two gunas, so always we should be sattvic and we should ignore rajasic and tamasic. That is a bondage. That is not freedom. Because you prefer. Go beyond your preference. Don't prefer anything because all the possibilities are necessary for your existence. One should have that wisdom. One should have that wisdom that tamasic is necessary, sattvic quality is necessary, and rajasic qualities are necessary. All these qualities are necessary in different phase of my life, in different moments of my life. And at the same time, one should have wisdom that I am neither tamasic, I am neither nor sattvic, nor rajasic. I use these three gunas, and at the same time, I should know that I am not identified with any of these gunas. The moment I identify myself as tamasic, I should understand no, sometimes rajasic guna is necessary, sometimes sattvic guna is necessary. So I am tamasic cancelled. Suppose I think I am rajasic, immediately I should know, no, sometimes I am tamasic, sometimes I am sattvic. So I am rajasic, this is cancelled. So, similarly, suppose I have a vanity, I have a wrong conception, wrong conviction that I am sattvic. Similarly, at the same time, I should know, I should understand tamasic quality is also necessary, rajasic quality is also necessary. If I am only sattvic, I am a limited personality. I am a useless personality. That means I am not free. Free means freedom from gunas, freedom from mental modifications, chitta vritti nirodha. There should not be any vritti, there should not be, there vrittis will be there, but mind is free from that. That is freedom. And when this freedom is attained, when man is free from sattva, raja and tama, when man is free from chitta vrittis, when man is free from all types of thoughts, that man can surrender. Because if there is any thought that compels you to become formal, casual, in any sense, that means you are not free, therefore you cannot surrender. So surrender means not only through action, but also in wisdom. Suppose I know how to surrender in doing my duty. That is one qualification. Even in your ideation, even in your knowledge, even in your wisdom, even in your realization, you should surrender. Because you know that you are free from all types of mental modifications or vrittis. That is called psychological freedom. That is called the freedom from the mind. And when Arjuna was trained in all these 17 chapters, from chapter 1 to 17 chapters, about Jnana Yoga, about Karma Yoga, about Bhakti Yoga, now he is asked to surrender. Because your ignorance is left out. Your ignorance has been transformed into knowledge. Which knowledge? Sa vidya ja vimukta. Now you are qualified with that wisdom which has made you free from all types of limitations. Now you are really qualified to surrender before me. Sarva dharman paritejya mamekam saranang braja. Sarva dharman means whatever you have learned to be dharma or adharma. There is a long course of discussion. What is dharma? What is adharma? What is swadharma? What is paradharma? Everything we have discussed. But now you forget everything. Now forget means you become free. You go beyond that. Now this is the right moment to surrender before me. And the very act of surrender is bhakti. So action and knowledge, they culminate in bhakti. So the very act of surrender is called bhakti. So, bhakti is the highest spiritual sadhana. Bhakti inspires us to surrender, and that is possible when we are free. We are free. So bhakti is the state of real freedom. That freedom of devotion, that freedom of that attainment of freedom can be called as bhakti. That is surrender, and that is possible through the physical, some freedom from the physical bondage and freedom from the psychological bondage. So what was the problem? The problem was that freedom and surrender, they appear to be opposite. They appear to be opposite. But here we see that only a person who is free can surrender. And he who surrenders is really a free person. If you do not, therefore Lord Krishna does not force, does not compel Arjuna to surrender. Arjuna has given 100% freedom to Arjuna, that I had explained everything to you. Now it is up to you to what to do, what not to do. You attain that state of freedom. And you can attain that state of freedom if you knock at the last door. That last door is surrender. You can't attain that state of freedom if you do not open the last door of your perfection. You have opened 17 doors. 17 doors in 17 chapters. But in the 18th chapter, you have to open the last door of perfection, that is surrender. If you are a scientist, surrender before the nature, because no scientist can explore the entire nature, neither in his life nor in the life of human beings. Science cannot explore the whole creation. So if you are a scientist, surrender before the nature. If you are a philosopher, surrender before wisdom, because you can't have the wisdom of the totality. Immanuel Kant, Gautam Buddha, they have explained this very well. With the best use of human mind, no man can explore, understand, realize the whole truth. So if you are a philosopher, surrender before wisdom. Love your wisdom. That love for wisdom is philosophy. If you are a philosopher, respect every philosophy, Jaina system. Because your view is only relative. So a real philosopher is one who does not have any ism, any view. This is my view. I am a philosopher in this regard. Because my followers, I have 1 lakh followers. That means the teacher is in bondage, the teacher is not free, and the disciples are also trapped by that teacher, that forum, that form. Sa vidya ja vimukte, that is paravidya. We should need that knowledge, that wisdom, which is bracket free, which is non-discriminative, which is transcendental, which can transcend all limitations. So that is surrender. That is only possible when the lower surrenders before the higher. If we say God, Lord Krishna, it will be a question of religion. It is very secular in spirit, because the lower will surrender before the higher. When the lower will surrender before the higher, that lower can attain freedom. So a free man can surrender, and the man who surrenders is really a free man. So in one sentence, I shall conclude my talk. Be free to surrender. If you are not free to surrender, don't surrender. If you are surrendering, before the higher principle, please understand that you are surrendering. If you are not free, if you are not stable, then at least don't surrender. Use your rationality till you attain that state. After using your the best rationality, when you realize now I am free, then only you will be qualified to surrender. So be free to surrender. That was the last message of Lord Krishna to Arjuna. You are not bound to surrender. You are free to surrender. Therefore, freedom and surrender, they go hand in hand. They are the two sides of the same coin. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pramod Das, for yet another nice lecture. Well, two important things that have come while I was listening to you, two to three things. Before we go for discussion, let us look into what he has said, that on the question of freedom and surrender. First thing he said, wherever there is freedom, there is a sense of responsibility attached. And the second thing he said that every moment we should cultivate the habit of being free and also being responsible for that. And this habit of being free every moment will bring about a transformation that would ultimately help somebody to attain that highest freedom, where there is a possibility of a total self-surrender before that divine force. So, what is this transformation all about? This transformation is about, it's a journey wherein you make a conscious effort to be free from all sorts of desires, passions, preconceived notions, thoughts, etc., etc., that really bind you. So this is possible whenever, when it's only when we think of the sense of freedom from a highest perspective, where we are so much sure that the desires, passions, preconceived notions are never going to, are always going to bind you and never free you, and it's hence essential. In order to attain that spiritual freedom, you need to have this freedom from all these lower elements, so that we can achieve that highest freedom. So here, while talking about the pratyahara, the element of pratyahara that is essential, he made a point, very good point, that it's not that the senses, it's not over just the control over the senses. Even there is a need of transcending the mind. Okay, the mind has to transcend itself. Okay, that's there lies a path, to final path to attain that spiritual freedom. And a free man is that man who is free every moment. He may be in a Vyavaharik platform, but he knows the limits of that Vyavaharik platform. And he has a transcendence to that Paramarthic level, and also understands and is also free at that level. So the transition from both the sides is possible for a really free man. So when we talk of freedom in a limited sense, there is a responsibility attached. But slowly having a transformation, there is a sense of spiritual freedom wherein you totally surrender before the Lord. You are no more responsible. Why? When there is a total surrender, it is the responsibility of the Lord. It is only the sense of, there is no sense even. It is only the action that counts, without having any sort of agency. When the sense of ego, when the sense of agency, when the everything is in the surrender, everything is lost. So there is no question of responsibility at all. And the question of responsibility is taken by the divine. So that's the message that I could get from his talk. So the freedom and having a responsibility at one level, and a total freedom, and with a sense of freedom there is a total surrender where there is no responsibility attached, because there is no sense of agency, and it is the total responsibility of that divine force, and it is only the action that counts where there is no sense of agency. Thank you, sir, for your lecture. Well, let us look into somebody who has any comment. I don't ask individually. If somebody has something to say, they are welcome. But before that, let me look into the chat box. Or if somebody wants to make some comment, they are welcome. Well, I don't see any question in the chat box, but let us wait for half a minute. If somebody wants, they can unmute and ask any question, because it's a very clear lecture. I don't think there would be any cross question on this issue. But if somebody wants to make any observation on this, they are welcome. Well, I don't see any question on this. Well, thank you, sir, for your very nice lecture. I really enjoyed this lecture. A very beautiful lecture, I say. And it has carried a lot of message where we move from a sort of freedom and responsibility, and to a phase of total surrender without being responsible for our acts, because we have totally surrendered and there is no sense of agency. Thank you, sir, for your lecture. Well, I see something, somebody writing something in the chat box. Well, it is Ravani Mishra. He says something. Let me see. Well, Ravani Mishra, he makes a point about the consequences. Well, Sar has already pointed out that there is no pondering. Well, in this freedom, there should be no pondering over the consequences. Well, he has made this point right, very much clear about that. So the consequences, the very act of thinking of the consequences do not come to play here. But still, if Professor Das, if he's seeing that question, well, if he's looking into the question asked by Ravani Mishra, he's concerned about the consequences every moment. So, well, you have addressed this issue, because a free man is never concerned about the consequences. He is already the sole concern. Well, he's Swadharma, and that counts. He's never concerned about the consequences. So that's how the very picture of consequences don't arise well here. But if Professor Das wants to address something over this, well,
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Very much, sir. Very much.
Yes, sir. So you have already answered the question. So it is very clear that we should have orientation about the consequence. It is the common sense that everybody will ask this question, that it is also asked in the Bhagavad Gita, that how can we do an action without kamana for the consequence. Consequence should be thought of, should be planned of. We should plan the consequence. We should have orientation about the consequence. But we should not hang over the consequences. We should not overthink consequences. We should not be trapped by the consequences. We should focus on our action. Take for example, we are sitting in the examination hall. In the examination hall, we have a very stipulated time. We have to answer all questions in 3 hours. Therefore, we should focus on the question and answer. We should not be worried about the result or the next course of education. So, if we are trapped by consequence any way, sattvic way or rajasic way or tamasic way, that means we are not free. That is a disease. That is not the spirit of a karma yogi. Karma yogi will not have any time for consequence, because he has proper orientation about karma. He is really oriented, karma oriented. He is not consequence oriented. Whatever consequence may come, I am ready to meet it, because my action is duty, my action is dharma, and I am here to protect dharma. I shall protect dharma irrespective of the consequences. This should be the spirit of a real karma yogi. Thank you. And we can apply it in a practical life.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. One thing, let me put forth here from what Professor Das has said, and to add something to it. Well, the focus on the consequences will not only be disturbing, but at the same time, they will liquidate your effort. The focus should be on the present moment, but you are diverting the focus to the future, and that is uncertain. So doing so, you are liquidating the present moment. So the present moment become dangerous. If the present moment become dangerous, the future will never be assured. The consequences will be dangerous. Had there been the focus on the present of what you are doing, without thinking of the consequences, and as the law of karma speaks, automatically the consequences are assured. But if you focus on the consequences, your present is disturbed, your present action is disturbed, your present action becomes deviated because the focus has deviated, so your consequences will be deviated. So you will be diverted from your consequences. So never focus on the consequences. Take life as it comes to you. That's the only message from Bhagavad Gita. Take life as it comes to you, because that is the way you have to move. If you focus on what will happen, you are not justifying the present. So that's the message that I get. Thank you for raising this question. So, well, I don't see any more questions in the chat box. Thank you very much, madam, for the question, and thanks, Professor Das, for responding to it. Well, now I request Swarnalata Tripathi, madam, to propose a formal vote of thanks.
To all, I thank our esteemed participants for their benign presence in this session. Our esteemed speaker, Pramod sir, for delivering a talk on freedom and surrender. Freedom and surrender appear to be opposite to each other, but in fact, they are complementary to each other. A free man can surrender, and the man who surrenders is really free. This talk was very insightful. I thank Dr. Rao sir for his silent and active support in making this program successful. He beautifully moderates all sessions with interest and dedication. His concluding remark is very clear and pinpointed. I thank you all. We shall meet again next Saturday evening with a new topic, Mukhya Sannyas. धन्यवाद. Pranam.
I also thank you, madam, for your effort behind conducting this webinar series. So, from the core of my heart, I extend highest regards and thanks to you. May this attempt carry on long and strong. Thank you so much. And thanking everybody. Now I declare this meeting closed. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, everybody. I also finally also thank the speaker. Thank you.